All right, everybody, this is the How to Hunt Deer podcast. I'm Dan Johnson. Sitting across from me digitally is Jason Thibodeau. Jason, kind of a crazy past couple weeks for you.
Yeah, a little busy,
Yeah.
little unexpected with a few things, but we're good. We're home, and everybody seems to be on the mend.
Yeah. How is the wife?
She's better. She's got high blood pressure, basically, is the biggest concern right now. But she basically had post-extreme preeclampsia, I guess is what they call it.
Yeah. What is that?
So her liver numbers were really off and high, and her kidney function same way. And then her blood pressure was, 1 minute it'd be fairly normal, and then the next minute it'd be like 165 over 110, so it would just elevate like that. And so they've been kind of monitoring that a couple weeks leading to us having the baby, and they knew it would potentially be a risk, but they had sent us home after the baby was born, and then they did some labs the last day that we were there, and then the doctor called I guess it was a week ago Saturday, and said you need to come back to the hospital. So then they readmitted her until the following Monday there, and she got released, and she's kind of been on this kind of like watch, can't drive and stuff. But she's doing better. The baby's doing really good, so we're happy for that. So
Have you bought the baby a bow yet?
no, but I did. We went downstate for the girls were downstate for track this past weekend, and we stopped in East Peoria there and got her I Hunt for Hugs camo hat. So
Okay. I love it.
yeah,
I love it.
and big shout out to my oldest stepdaughter. She won state in the high jump for 7th grade, and she broke.
And that's in the state of Illinois
Yeah, state of Illinois
for her division.
for it's class 2A.
2A, yeah.
Yep, and she broke her own school record. So she jumped at 4'11", and then her and my oldest daughter, they ran in the 4x1 relay, and they placed 7th in the state. So
Nice.
it was kind of a nice weekend of track events and stuff. So
Yeah. And was the wife able to come, or was she still on kind of like bed rest with the baby?
no, she went, and we just kind of limited how much we walked and stuff. We found some spots in the bleachers to sit, and we're fairly comfortable. And we stayed in a hotel Friday night because her daughter ran also in the 100-yard on Fridays.
That's crazy. Dude, I've been in a hotel room before with a brand new baby,
Yeah,
and it sucks, dude. Like, or going to an event right after, and I don't know what your wife was doing, but when my wife was doing it, she had breast pumps and had to like milk herself like
yeah.
throughout the day and find time for that. And it just was like, God, we're here, but we don't want to be kind of deal. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's a lot of extra work, and she hasn't started the whole pumping thing yet, so it's literally like breastfeed the whole time. But we made it work, and we had all the other kids available to help out as needed, and it was a fun weekend. So, and then yesterday was kind of catch up on a few things at home and enjoy a little time outside, and then
yeah,
transition into baseball and softball seasons. So,
dude. We had a baseball off this weekend, but we had a wrestling tournament. Next weekend, we don't have a wrestling tournament or baseball, and it would be nice to just kind of chill. But like, I've been told, I don't say I have, I've been told that I have projects to do.
yeah.
So awesome. Can't wait for that. Right. Just, dude. And here's the other thing. I'm starting to sound like an old asshole these days, but like, dude, I just filled my truck up for like $115.
Dude, it's
What's going on?
It is insane. So I have 2 diesel pickup trucks for work, and that's all I can afford, and I can't even afford that. To fill each one of them is costing me anywhere to $170 to $180 a fill up. And then, each week I fill up the mowers and then the tractor and stuff, so my fuel bill per week just in those things, not including our van or our Suburban,
Yeah.
$600, dude. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to get in. I don't want to get into it.
No. I mean, we could go down so many rabbit holes with it. It's unreal.
And we choose to do it, right? Like, we choose to put our kids in all these events, and we choose to do all these other things. But like, honestly, I think this fall, I don't think I want to coach football. And I like my boy. He says I don't want to play football. My oldest boy's like, I don't know if I want to play football again. I'm like, okay, cool. but then we can do more hunting, which
Right.
is still driving
Right.
places, you know what I mean? But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Huge shout out to our partner. Well, we got a couple partners we have to talk about real quick. So, and I haven't really talked to you about this, but so the Hunting Gear podcast has kind of been on a hiatus for a little bit. So I'm transferring a little bit of that exposure over to this podcast for right now. But the Reveal trail cameras, if you haven't taken a look at the new Ultra or any of their trail cameras or their cellular trail cameras, or you haven't gone and updated your app to get the newest version of the app, go check it out. That's all I'm going to say. Go check out the Reveal app, the Tacticam Reveal trail cameras, and there's a lot of cool things coming down the pipe with those cameras. Now, outside of that, we have Code Blue Scents. Code Blue is they're a scent company. Whether you want scent, like real and synthetic deer urines, whether you want to eliminate scent through body washes and laundry detergents or field sprays, or if you want to have the Rope-A-Dope Mock Scrape Kit, which is both of our favorites, go check out codebluescents.com, discount code NFC20. Sometime here pretty soon, I'm going to be going and grabbing some minerals. I like the easy stuff, the Lucky Buck, the Trophy Rocks. There's some other stuff that I've used in the past. I'm gonna go put that out, and while I'm out there, I'm gonna hang my trail cameras. I'm gonna do my and then I'm gonna start freshening up some of my mock scrapes just to smelling like they should smell. So codebluescents.com, go check it out. Discount code HTH20 for 20% off. All right. What were we going to talk about today?
Well, so while I was sitting in the hospital with my wife and stuff, I started diving into what I was going to do this fall because I drugged my feet so long that I missed out on out of state tags. So I decided that I'm going to hunt some public ground here in Illinois. And I came up with 4 spots that I'm going to look into a little bit more and potentially, take a trip and scout these properties. So I thought maybe we could give some new hunters or even a veteran hunter some tips and some tactics of maybe what we look for and how we approach, hunting on public ground, especially nowadays with so much of the private ground being gobbled up.
Yeah. So my first question for you is remind me how how Illinois allocates their tags. Do you get one archery tag and one gun tag, or do you get 2 tags and use them however you want?
So I can go by either pros and cons to both sides of it. But with that said, I think you used to be able to, in a CWD county, if you had an unfilled tag, you used to be able to fill it with whatever was remaining. So if I shot 2 archery bucks, but then I also had an either sex gun tag that I hadn't used during the gun season, I could use it during the late CWD season and still tag like a 3rd buck or 4th buck, depending on what I had left. Basically, as a resident, mine's fairly cheap. I think it's $26.50 for the archery tags, and that's the combo tags. And then, like I say, I always buy 2 just in case. I mean, if you have that freak thing where you have 2 bucks walk through or something.
So you can shoot 2 bucks with your archery tackle in the state of
Yes.
Illinois
Yeah.
and get a gun tag, or no?
You can still get the gun tag, and because you have to apply for the gun tag. They do sell over the counter leftover sales, come October 6th or something weird like that. And then obviously there's the youth season that comes into play with it, but there's really not in northern Illinois, northwest Illinois where I'm at, there's not a whole lot of restrictions with it. You got 2 bucks, so you can get your 2 buck tags, but you could also, like I say, if I bought those tags for archery season and I had applied for a gun tag, I could potentially have the 3 either sex tags. I just can only tag 2 bucks. But then
Okay.
but then in a CWD county, which in what I live and a couple of my hunt are, you could tag a 3rd buck
Okay.
only
So
during that CWD season.
that's the loophole is
Yeah.
okay. All right. So I know you like bow hunting. So so it sounds to me like with this public land adventure that you're kind of wanting to go on this year, you're looking to get an archery buck at one of your private pieces and then go looking around for another buck on private.
I mean, that's kind of the plan, but I think what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to put this, unless something special shows up on camera or something, I think I'm going to put this hunt right in the prime time of rut. so that way I'm on public ground and what I think is the best time to hunt that property. What the properties that I'm not gonna tell you where they're at, but
Yeah, yeah.
um, I know the areas and I know I've hunted down there before. It's been several years, but not on the public ground. I hunted some private ground down there. I think I want to enjoy the rut
Mhm.
again down there. It's been a while since I've hunted in that area, and I think it'd be fun. So I think that's where I'm gonna put my eggs this year is that. Unless, like I said, unless there's something really special that shows up on trail camera here back home, I'm gonna dive into that. So I guess what I wanted to do was when you're I kind of ask questions maybe back and forth with this, so when you're looking at public ground within your state, because we've talked about this several times where we don't utilize our own states as much as we probably should. What I discovered is that the rules and regulations obviously change per site. Some of these sites there's antler restrictions on one of them, which I thought was kind of odd because the state of Illinois doesn't have that. But the one was 4 points per side or one side per one side.
Even in the state of Illinois.
It
Interesting.
on public ground on
On
this
public ground.
specific piece, it had to have 4 points on one side. A lot of these properties, you have to get a windshield card, like an access card, which you have to apply for before the season. And then in order to get that windshield card back, I think it's somewhere in the middle of February, you have to report your hunting to the state, and then they will reissue another one for the following year
Yeah.
before on different properties. But the other thing that I really looked into, which for me is a big deal on any sort of traveling hunt, is where I'm going to stay. That's like one of the biggest things I first looked to is am I tent camping? Am I going to have to shuttle back and forth to a hotel? What's that look like? But I want to get to know the area. So one of the first things too is I'm calling a biologist. And I want to find out like what does the herd look like, right now, and be honest about it, because I feel like there's times where I've called and I've gotten straight up honest answers, and then I feel like there's times I've called and they kind of like lure you in, like, oh well, it's not this bad. Well, it actually is that bad. I've
Yeah.
seen that multiple times. But
Yeah.
so for you, what's the first step you take?
No, I'm going to volley it right back to you because I want to know. You said you have 4 properties already
Yeah.
picked out. What was attractive about these 4 properties that they made the final cut?
So obviously the one big thing is, I go back and forth with a lot of guys like a ton of ground, they like thousands of acres, because they feel like they can get in, they can get away from other hunters. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes there's those little honey holes that are tucked away, there might be 100 and some acre piece,
Mhm.
and it gets overlooked because it's walk in or, maybe you can't camp there, but you have to drive an hour to get there or something. Just so I looked at some of that was one of the biggest things. I want to be able to camp. And depending on what the weather's like, I like to get a shower once every couple days if I'm doing something like this, so weather pending, if I'm going down for 7 days, I want to get a shower in the middle at least. I don't mind sitting out in the middle of the woods and wiping down if I have to, but I don't mind getting clean too. So that's kind of a big deal. One of the other things is kind of like just researching like deer per square mile and what that looked like initially, and then harvest numbers from previous years, not just last year, but 5, 10 years, and what that outlook was, if there was any breakouts of EHD or CWD in those counties and stuff. So that was kind of where I started. And then it was Illinois kind of has different properties where there's, different counties and stuff. And as far as that goes too, where if you're hunting a property that's split with two counties, you need to know those regulations and if there's anything that changed on those sites. So when I broke these spots down, there's multiple sites within that you can use the same windshield card for. So there actually is a ton more ground that's accessible by one windshield card, which was huge. There was a gigantic piece that I really didn't get into. It was number 4 on the list. Don't know much about it, but it's one of those that, if 1, 2, and 3 didn't pan out, whether it was my preseason scouting here or once I was actually down there hunting, that I would end up there. So the first 3 were just, I love the terrain. That was part of it.
That was going to be my next questions. It's like all that camping shit and the regulation shit is great
Yeah,
to know.
right.
To call the biologist, that's great to know. but something else led you to this property first before that said, oh, I like the way this looks.
Yes.
Okay, so
So
talk to me about that.
okay, so you know this as far as like when we went out to Nebraska. One of the biggest things that I've looked at with special digital mapping, and that, we don't have to talk about whose mapping software you use or anything like that, but when I started going out of state, I started looking at different terrain features that really caught my eye and different ways that I could access the properties from each parking area. I want to be able to have different access points for different wind directions. So the way the terrain plays out was a huge thing for me. A lot of times you'll notice, especially like if there's a long ravine, there's always fingers coming up in and out of it and whatever. And how you can access those big ravines or how you can access those fingers is kind of crucial. So I looked at how much cover is there? Is there any sort of food sources? And that was another thing that was kind of like, it was a double-edged sword. The state of Illinois must not be putting a whole lot of money into planting food plots anymore on public ground. So it's all going back to natural. Well, a lot of these, with it going back to natural, it's actually become deer browse, because it's probably at that 5 foot high. You got sucker trees and CRP ground that's basically come out of old pastures or, old cornfields and stuff now. So I started looking at that. I started looking at water. What kind of water is there? Is there ponds? Is there creeks? Is there a river? And then what kind of access could I have if I used that? It may be one of those things where you go by a pair of waders and you wade into a spot and then maybe you're eliminating some of the pressure that way. Or you can kayak or boat in. So those were kind of some of the biggest things that I used, but just the layout. To me, I like to have a mixture of timber and open. Here at home, I hunt a lot of more open ground than anything. It's a lot of,
Ag.
yeah, I mean, it's ag, it's fence rows, it's waterways, it's maybe a little small ridge that has a overgrown pocket of trees on it, and that's about the extent of my hardwoods. So for me to go hunt something that's hardwoods, it's kind of out of my realm. And, I've done it before, but so I looked into that and I think that, I may end up diving into that a little bit harder so I can throw that experience in there as far as all the years of hunting. Can you actually kill a big deer in the big hardwoods?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So have you touched any of these places before with your boots on the ground?
So yeah. So 20 20 years ago, I was hunting some public ground that we used to lease for like a weekend or two at a time. And then
Some private or public?
some private, I'm sorry.
Private. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So when we went down, we hung stands one time, and then we decided on our way back, let's take this route or whatever. And we stumbled upon this area, and I'm like, oh my gosh, let's check this out. And we drove in, and then we parked, and we found a couple spots of like, let's just venture out for an hour or two and then see what we see and go from there. And the sign that I saw then 20 years ago looked appealing then, and I just never went back. So it was one of those that I had in the back of my head, like maybe, just maybe I'll end up here some point someday, or maybe I'll have to because of the lack of private ground that I have now. And it is becoming that too. I've lost more properties, just not even because of family members dying or anything like that, but specifically because farmers taking out fence rows. There was so many spots that I used to hunt that I would walk clear crust fields, to just go hang in a couple trees that were in a perfect spot, and they're not there anymore. So I happen to do this public thing. It's not just because of lack of hunting here, but it's also because of the experience. I wanted to still do some sort of trip. I felt with a newborn that this is going to be a good transition, good option for the year within driving distance that I'm not going to have to drive through the night or anything crazy. I can kind of pick and choose my dates a little bit easier with work. And so I think this is going to work out well. So that's why I chose these first three for sure. The fourth one, like I said, it's kind of a coin toss. I might map it out a little bit better, and then if I see something on that looks appealing, I may check it out. So
Okay. So let's be specific now.
okay.
Specific on these properties. You said they're kind of a bigger hardwood type property.
Yep.
When you were looking at these you had a 20 years ago knowledge of them, but you also had, like, you've been doing your digital scouting. What was it about the terrain, like, and the access? Like,
Uh,
I want specifics.
yep.
I don't want the address to this place, but
No,
I want, you looked at it and you go, oh, this ridge looks beautiful, or this water presents an access opportunity, or you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
look,
I'm so
tell us
I
about those.
Yep, so I'm gonna pull them up here, and I'm obviously not gonna give out the addresses, but I'm going to see if I can find what was actually.
And while you're doing that, I will say this: I get it as far as, dude, there's a part of me this year with my knee and the recovery process of me not being able to do anything. Like, dude, I tried to mow the yard yesterday.
Yeah,
And then or not yesterday, I did mow the yard. It took me twice as long as what it normally does. And after I was done, I literally could barely walk the rest of the day. And then the next day, my knee was so tight, like I just had to do nothing. Right. And so there's part of me that wants to go into a piece of public and just be like, do I still got it? You
yeah,
know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I found success doing the run and gun style hunting. Do I still have what it takes to get the job done,
yeah,
even on public? And so there's a part of me that's like, let's give it a try again.
yeah. I mean, obviously, we've been out of state and we've hunted a lot of different properties, public ground and stuff. But I went back to like what we were talking about last year with not utilizing within the state, and I thought, man, my tag's pretty cheap here to hunt within. So these properties that I looked at, the first one has great access basically from like once you get into this area, it's kind of centralized where you can camp, and then there's a great trail system throughout. So I mean, if you felt like there was a lot of pressure from other people, I feel like you could easily escape that. That's just putting some boots to the ground and hiking it out.
Yeah.
Then that tied into a couple other pieces that weren't connected, so obviously you would have to travel to them, but you could camp on the one main one. And then that was kind of the same thing, once you get into where you can park, everything's kind of centralized there. And then you could space out from that. So then what I started to look into is as far as that goes, the one piece had pretty good diversity as far as I could tell. There was a couple water sources, there was a small creek, and then there was all these just amazing features to me of fingers, and then there was ridges, there was saddles, and then, there was these openings, these clearings where any given wind I think you could hunt, and I think I'm going to be wrong by saying that, obviously, because not having the bigger hardwoods experience, I can't sit here and necessarily say any given wind you could hunt, but I think you could, if you're accessing and if you can identify some bedding and stuff, I think you definitely could. So this is, I mean, almost 30 years of hunting, it's going to be a little bit new experience for me, kind of like last year with hunting elk for the first time, so I want to be able to put that on the resume and say, okay, well, I did that, and what's success look like? Can I identify that sign? Do I still have it in me to hike that far? Or, some of these, oh, here's another thing to think about. Some of these parks or walk-in areas you have to remove your stand every day, so you can't just drag a ladder stand in and in September or 1st of October and label it and leave it there till next year, so you gotta be packing probably for the day, and for me personally, I think if I'm doing this hunt like this, I'm sitting all day in the stand.
Yeah.
I may bounce from tree to
Yeah.
tree, but I'm probably staying out there all day.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of great points there. Okay. I don't know how I would even, I think for me, okay, let me ask you this. Are you going to plan between now and hunting season to try to get there again and walk through some of these pieces and just be like, confirm old sign? I know it's green up and we're here and it's green and it's green until November now.
Yeah.
Are you going to try to get there and verify locations and look at access routes and, fight the mosquitoes and ticks?
Yeah, that's I mean, I'd love to, right? I'd love to do it probably if I have my way with it, I'd love to do it somewhere around that first part of August because I feel like, there's gonna obviously things will be changing, but from the outside looking in, there's all your crop ground is going to be full height by then. And, I'll be able to see where the ag is and if there is a destination food
Yeah.
source, and here's another thing too, I mean, we're talking Illinois where there's tons of outfitters and all that. So, you know what green food plots are out there, what box blinds are out there, what, hunting pressure may be from here or there. So you might be able to scout basically on the outside, for a couple hours just driving around and then dive into it and say, okay, well, I like this. And then, looking at some of these too, you got to make reservations for your campsite if that's where you're going to, stay is there. So definitely I would love to, and I think it'd be great because another thing that I've been thinking about with this is with all these things, technology wise and everything, I'm still old school where I like a hard copy map and I still carry a compass with me that has, a ruler on it so I can measure things out. And I think that's to me that kind of goes back to having like the old school woodsmanship and putting myself in that situation where the phone's put away for a minute. I don't know. Maybe I can at least teach the kids how to read a map someday.
Yeah, dude. So one thing that I think it's awesome, right? Getting kids out there, and some kids want to be more involved than others. My daughter kind of told me that she is okay with turkey hunting, but she doesn't know if she wants to deer hunt this year. She's because deer are cute mammals and they're not ugly turkeys. And my oldest boy, he wants to do it, right? And so I think for my son, I'm slowly getting back to what you're talking about here, is we have all this public ground within driving distance of our house, right? And so why not go in there and cut his teeth on how to read terrain, how to follow deer sign? It's like,
Right,
okay, let's go in. Where do you think we should start?
right.
Should we start with these deer tracks right here? Look at this is the direction they're going. Let's just follow them for a little bit on this trail. Ooh, there's an old rub. What's that tell us? That a buck hangs out here at some point,
Yep.
you know? Okay, it's getting thick, or hey, we jumped a deer here. Maybe we put a tree stand up in here, right? Like all of that kind of stuff. And then maybe these scouting missions that they're not going to go hunt on a run and gun at like
No.
4 or 5 in the morning,
Yeah.
but you can take them with you to go scout to verify, and then you go in and it's a talking piece. But yes, I feel like yes, I agree with you. Is what I'm
I
getting
I
at.
just I don't know. I just think it's something that, if I'm able to make the time to go do this ahead of season, I'm gonna ask whoever wants to go with, what kids want to go with, my wife wants to go with, if we make it a weekend deal or what, but whoever wants to go out and hike, I want to be able to teach them some of the scouting that I've had to learn, and I used to walk into these woods and not having a clue, and then one of the back 25 years ago, I used to grab a map at these, you used to have to sign in at the boxes and stuff, when you got to a public piece. And I'd
Yeah,
grab a map and I just walk aimlessly down a trail. And then I'd turn around and look like, well, I went so far, but, I don't know what's ahead and I don't know which
yeah,
direction. And like, so putting it all together now, I still sometimes, like I say, put that phone down and just enjoy being out there.
yeah,
Everything's
yeah.
so techy right now that not to get sidetracked, but, like we talk about technology and everything, kids don't have to take keyboarding classes, and
No,
they're actually going to implement that in our school this coming year. So I think it's a great thing if we can go back a little bit and teach
yeah,
our kids some of our growing
yeah.
up time.
Before I can remember, before I even went to the courthouse and got a plat map that I could buy for $8, and I could buy a plat book of the entire county. And then when I started creeping onto the other county, I had to drive all the way to their courthouse and spend another $8 on their plat book. And so I didn't necessarily know where the property lines were because there's no blue dot on a piece of paper.
Right.
I just would I'd walk into I'd have the book with me, or the plat book. I'd be on a property that I know was there, and then I would just like walk to the creek, and where the creek would bend on the book, I would be like, okay, I should be here.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then you keep walking until you would hit a fence, usually, and then a fence was a property boundary, and how close you were to that or not. But even before that, when I was released on, this was when I was probably 13, 14 years old, when I got dropped off at houses, or I'd get out of the truck, the guy I was hunting with would go one direction, and he'd be like, you can go that way. I didn't even have tree stand,
Yeah.
right? He'd like go that way to a fence, go that way to a fence, and anything in between the first fence here and the first fence, like he would say, first fence to the south, you can't cross. First fence to the east, you can't cross. So anything here, you can hunt. You can go sit on a bump, a log or whatever, and wait. And so that's how I did. And it was less about knowing a map or a blue dot on a screen. And it was just like, it's almost like back in the olden days where they would give you directions. It'd be
Yeah.
like, hey, go to the big oak tree, take a right, and then, look for an old tractor in a ditch, take a left, and then, like those types of directions. So
Yep.
I knew when I walked into the timber, it was like, okay, here's the dead elm. I got to keep walking here. Then I cross the creek, and then I go up till I get to the old barn foundation that's there from 200 years ago or whatever. And then walk north straight there. And then finally I got a old log I can sit on where there's a good trail, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, it's funny because like that's what we got for directions. When we were first driving, it was like, well, turn left at the yellow statue, or turn right at the Casey's or whatever. And so to give those directions now, they look at you almost confused, and any pizza delivery that comes to our house here, they get the wrong house, so then they're calling like, we're at the house, like, no you're not, and we got to give them directions. And my first instinct to giving somebody directions is like, well, head south.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
and how many people don't know south, is just amazing. And it's like, I think that's something that I definitely want to teach all the kids, is like
Right.
at least be able to know your direction. If you get lost in the middle of the woods, at least be able to turn and say, okay, that's, sunrise is in the east or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, so back to the original question. Yeah, I do want to try to get down and scout. I'd love to throw some pins on my here. I'm gonna say technology right now. I'd love to throw some pins on my map, and say, hey, this looks like a good spot to sit in or set up and come fall.
Yeah, man. Dude, I think it's just going to be like my knee's my number one priority, but after my knee, like I don't care. I'm going to use the technology on my private pieces.
Sure.
Right. I'm going to use the cell cams. I'm going to use the mapping apps and things like that. And I'll still use the mapping apps when I go out of state. But there's something really cool about just like going,
Yeah.
right? And maybe you don't even set up a tree stand and you're just sitting on a high point even in big timber, and you're looking and you're in November and you can just kind of look at the deer movement and hear them running around, and you might get an opportunity to tuck behind a tree and draw your bow back on a unsuspecting buck. But there's like the what if
Yeah.
seems to be going away. Like,
Hmm.
what if this buck shows up? Well, he's been on trail camera 15 times in the last 20 days, and we know he's going to come through this pinch at some point. We're just going
Yeah.
to sit in this pinch, right? So, yes, but there's something cool about that, the aspect of just like stepping away from what you're comfortable with and going into something that's complete unknown. That is pretty badass, dude. And I respect people who can do that year after year.
Absolutely. I think the element of surprise is what's been taken away from it with technology and
Mhm.
with busy lives and, trying to, trying to make it easier, with
Right.
everything. It's like, why is it always about easy? If I go on this public land hunt, here's another question I ask myself. Well, I know what I have at home to hunt, so I know what kind of caliber deer are there. Do I go on this public land hunt with some sort of expectations of like what I hope to shoot or hope to see, or do I just enjoy it? And I think that's what's happened too with evolution through hunting for me is I've gotten so almost laid back in my spots that like I know if I'm patient enough, I know what dates to go, I know that there'll be 150-inch deer plus, and it's, I don't want to say it's boring because it's not boring, it's still fun. It's just this is a different level, of like, okay, I got to push myself to learn something new real quick, and then I got to figure out what, hey, say I shoot something, how am I getting it out of here? And then the whole process with it. I was listening to Tony Peterson's one of his podcasts, or I don't know if it was with you or if it was just on one of his, but talking about how a lot of guys don't know where their meat comes from and everything. And, doing that full process of like actually processing your deer and cutting the meat up and everything, and then learning how to cook it, I think that gets lost in it too. That's a
Yeah.
whole nother thing. We drop our deer off at a butcher shop and then we get it back. And yeah, it's still venison. Venison's
Yeah.
venison, right? But
Yeah.
full process.
Yeah. Man, I'll tell you this. I used to do full processing until I got to a point where I'm just like, dude, like this takes forever. I don't want to invest in all of the grinding stuff because I was killing deer and then I was hanging them at my mom's house. My stepdad has all of that stuff. And then if you wanted to do like a ground beef mix, like cut it with beef or fat, then you had to grind that in yourself. And then you had to buy the wax paper or the butcher paper and all that stuff. And then, it's just, I don't know. If I had more time, I would do it, dude.
I was just
Like,
gonna say it's very time consuming.
it's very time consuming. And then the other thing is like, because of my knee, even before my knee surgery, I had issues getting my deer out of the woods. So I had to call a guy to
Yeah.
help me essentially drag it. And then he pretty much did it by himself. But, I'm hoping my knee gets stronger because there are some spots, I'm going to be completely honest with you, that in the last couple years, I have not hunted because I don't know if I could get a deer out of there. For example, in Iowa, you're
Yep.
supposed to remove the whole deer
Yep.
out of the woods. You're not supposed to quarter them up and pack them out, right? You got to drag in a cart or pure strength, right? Drag that entire deer out of the woods in the state of Iowa. And I'm just like, dude, I don't want to have to do that,
Yeah.
right? Way back here. Now it's a little different when I go to South Dakota because yes, there's big terrain, but there's no I get to cut that deer up. I get to take all the meat off of it. I get to cut his head off and put him in a backpack and then, leave the bones and the hide there. Right.
Right. Right.
The other thing that I do is like, there's no trees to jump over. There's no deadfall. There's just like, it's just up and down, whatever. And so I don't know, man. It's crazy. It's just, it is what it is. And I don't know, but you're right. There's something about the process, like the full process that I haven't done in a couple years
Mhm.
from the walking into virgin property to scouting it, to finding it, to a deer that I had no clue was there showing up, to shooting it. And like, I don't know, man. It's,
Some of the best hunting stories and
that's
hunting.
the thing, dude. You nailed it. The
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
The story
Yeah.
is to me just gaining in importance as I get older.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, the whole story of like dragging the deer out and then, what that looked like, how long it took you, talking about the blood trail and then, once you got it back, what did you do with it? Did you process it yourself? Did you take out the tenderloins and cook them over the fire? That whole process, the good days, I guess, of hunting, I think it's kind of getting missed. And so I know it really got me intrigued. So I've got these spots, and yes, I'm going to make some of it a little bit easier, with technology and the advancements that we have. But man, I'd love to just go in there and say that I'm not taking my phone, I'm not
Yeah.
taking my compound, I'm just going to take a recurve, I'm just going to go sit on a bucket or whatever.
Yeah.
I'd love to tell that story.
Yeah.
And I won't if I never do it, so
Right. That's 100% true, dude. I also would love to just leave my phone in the truck at some point, but my wife would probably kill me if,
yeah,
uh, you know, I don't know, like you trip and fall, you break your ankle, you fall at a tree stand these days. I have never fallen. I've slipped and I had a
yeah,
safety harness on because I had muddy, wet boots on a climbing stick that was kind of at an angle,
yep,
but I had a lineman's belt on that kind of caught me and I jacked my leg up. But outside of that, dude, knock on wood, I've had a couple in the dark moments where my boot maybe wasn't completely on the platform,
yeah,
but it wasn't because of a broken cable. It wasn't because of I've checked all that stuff and I'm just like, thank God it's never happened to me.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Well,
kind of,
I do think that there is, I mean, going back to what you're saying about leaving the phone in the truck, I mean, there is some importance of having some sort of communication with you.
yeah,
People know where you're at, if something happens, especially when you're by yourself. I mean,
yeah,
that's probably the biggest thing. If
right.
you're hunting with a buddy or something, it may be a little bit different, but I don't know. So yeah, to that, I will probably use some of the advancements that we've had in the last 25, 30 years,
Yeah,
to not to make it easier, but just to enjoy it a little bit more.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is a great stopping point for this conversation. I think there is a little bit more to get into about, in the upcoming weeks about, I don't know, like what you're actually looking at, like
Yeah.
terrain features. And dude, it's going to be so hard. If you're scouting in full green up in a thick timber or a thick river bottom, and all of a sudden you follow a trail into what looks like a wall of vegetation,
Yeah.
now what?
Yeah.
Now what? And
Right.
so I know we both have experiences there of what we're going to be looking for. So I think we continue this conversation on another episode in the next couple weeks, and we just keep pounding out the details before this upcoming hunting season, dude. Because, dude, honestly, we're to a
Mhm.
point now where it just seems like we're closer to next season as opposed to last season. So
Absolutely. I mean, the
yeah,
time's just flying. I mean, we're already
yeah,
halfway through May, so it's amazing that, if you have cameras up right now and you're actually monitoring your deer, that they have
yep,
antlers on their heads and
yep.
the fawns are dropping. There's so much of that stuff right now. I finally went and got batteries for my cell cameras, so I just need the time to go recharge them and
Yep.
go from there.
Yep. I will say this, shout out to Interstate Batteries. If you're looking for any type of battery, whether it's for trail camera, truck, whatever, go check out your local Interstate Batteries retail store. They have everything you need for batteries. So they're a network partner. So I felt like that was a perfect time
Yeah.
to do that. So everybody, do us a huge favor. Go to iTunes, Spotify, wherever you download or listen to the How to Hunt Deer podcast. Give us a 5-star review. Make sure you're subscribed. Also, all of this content drops on YouTube. So if you want to see how attractive that we really are, you guys, you could go to YouTube and get that.
So I haven't watched the YouTube channel yet, but I did it because I had the last time we podcasted, I did the entry for
Yeah.
that my stepdaughter had,
Yep.
and so we had it on the counter and we were playing it out, and they were dying laughing. They thought it was
Right.
great, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it's great to look at us. But AI is something else, dude. Our
Oh,
our
dude.
faces never look the same.
No, it's hilarious because for the YouTube thumbnails that we do,
Yeah,
I don't care
yeah,
because I don't know why. I go I put generate a YouTube thumbnail for this episode, and it's
yeah,
me and you,
yeah.
our faces, and I know I never look the same. I never look the same. At least you look a little closer.
Yeah, it's been close a few
Yeah,
times, but I've seen a few times where we like almost flip-flop faces.
exactly.
It's like, what the heck?
Or I have earrings in
Yeah.
for some reason. Like I have my headphones get shrunk down to like real small, and I have
Yep.
earrings. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, dude, whatever. At
Yep.
this point, so AI's taking over the world. Hopefully,
Yes, it
it
is.
doesn't take over hunting. So
Yeah.
shout out to all of you. Have a good one. Good vibes. Jason, go enjoy your daughter, and we
All right.
will talk to you next time.